So we have Jess Allan today. I just wanted to say thank you for coming in for this conversation. I'm really
My
looking forward
pleasure.
to getting to know you as a spiritual director and what God was working in your life and how He brought you into this ministry. So
Hmm.
you were asking earlier how I know. So we share a mutual friend, Dr.
Yes.
Bruce Jackson, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you know him?
I know him. I've known him for probably 14 years at this point. The church that I work at was going through a pastoral transition back
Mm,
in 2011, and he served as the interim pastor
I
during
see.
that time. And we connected, and even though we did get a pastor, and he's since moved on, we've met probably every other week for 13, 14 years. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I worked at Rewire, and that's
Okay.
where Dr. Bruce Jackson was also
Hmm.
one of the founders of that. And
Hmm.
so obviously we worked together. But then I think quickly, I think where I really got to know him is I was also pastoring in Brockton, Massachusetts, and
Oh, okay.
and then he came to Brockton. I mean, I didn't know him back then, but
Uh-huh.
I learned from my Brockton fellow pastors. Somehow they knew Dr. Bruce Jackson, so I was like, "Oh,
Hmm.
how do you know him?" And so that's how I kind of start to learn about Bruce,
Yeah.
whom I was working with at the time, but I didn't know him very well because I just joined that organization.
Okay.
But then eventually, I signed up for to become a spiritual director myself, and then he
Hmm.
was the one who trained us. But after a while, like I really liked his pastoral heart, so he became
Hmm.
my mentor. So like I
Hmm.
asked him to be my mentor, and
Hmm.
then because I really appreciated his mentorship so much that I actually signed up to come to Baki Graduate University, where he was
Okay.
working as a doctor of ministry
Okay.
supervisor. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
That's
go.
great.
I work with him a lot now. So, but I wanted to know a little bit more about you. So, you're in ministry.
I am in ministry. I am the worship pastor at my church. So I'm in Western Pennsylvania, about an hour north of Pittsburgh, in a town called Grove City. And I work at a church. It's a bigger church in a small town. It's kind of how we categorize it. And the denomination is the Christian Missionary Alliance.
Mm.
And so I've been pastoring here for probably going on 17 years. I've attended longer than that, and I've led worship for a long time. But in terms of, vocational ministry, I've been doing it for about 17
So
years
you
here
are
at
a
this
worship
church.
pastor.
Yes.
Okay. So how did you come to that ministry? Like, what is your, if you could share a little bit about your journey toward that ministry?
Yeah. So I've been a musician my whole life, and grew up in a family and a church context that worship was a vital part of the Christian expression. And then in high school, just was given leadership in some ways, whether it was at a VBS or youth group or a mission trip, to do
VBS
worship,
meaning
to lead.
Discovery Bible Study, correct?
VBS, yeah,
Oh, a
Vacation Bible
VBS,
School.
the
Yeah,
Vacation
VBS.
Bible School. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
Vacation
thought I
Bible
heard
School. Yeah.
DES, but
Yeah, no, no, thank you.
VBS.
Thank you for that, for clarifying that. Yeah, so, kids programs, youth programs, mission trips, I would often sign up or join up to lead the singing or the songs, and worship times. When I went to college, I was a music education major, but I went to a Christian college, so it had a evangelical base, Presbyterian base, to the education. So I was part of a choir and things like that, that not just taught you music, but also taught how to lead a group of people.
Mm.
Um, so after I graduated from college, I did have a teaching job, but my husband and I have always gone to churches, and if we could get involved with the worship team, we would get involved with the worship team. So um, we've done that at all the churches that we've been to. But this particular church, when we started coming here in 2004, they had a worship pastor. I was teaching. but we just sort of joined the worship team, became really good friends with the couple that was leading worship here then. And then they transitioned out and went to a church in Florida. And that was when the lead pastor here asked me to come on and at that time help with a pastoral search. But amongst all sorts of things that happen with that,
Yeah.
I basically just assumed the position.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So,
So,
and so that's that. Now here we are 17 years later.
wow, yeah, it's been
Yeah.
a long time that you've been
Hmm.
serving in that role.
Yeah.
So when did you then encounter spiritual direction, and at what point in your ministry or in your life, spiritual direction has become part of your life?
About when I met Bruce.
Okay.
And it started out in a more what I'll call soul care role
Mm,
that he was in. It was something that as he was interim here, he took on the role as that kind of coach for those of us who were on staff here. And so soul care is more of a inner healing ministry, working through forgiveness, working through wounds, working
mm,
through um, spiritual attachments and bondages, things like that. And once we sort of unpacked a lot of those things, we kept meeting, but his role sort of transitioned more into asking questions like, where's God's invitation for you in this? How
mm,
do you sense God's movement in this? And so it morphed more from, what is going on with my soul to how do I sense God?
mm,
And as we started exploring that, that's when I even first heard the phrase spiritual direction, spiritual worship, or spiritual director. So it was something that I knew before I knew what it was called, if that makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And then I have a friend who got involved in a program that's not far from here in Ashland, Ohio, through a ministry called Healing Care Ministries. And she started to be trained as a spiritual director. And as she was going through that program, she came to me and said, I think you would really like this. I think this is something
Mm,
you're already doing. I think that you'd really appreciate the type of training that they give. So I signed up for it, and it was a 2 year program that I went through, and man, I just fell in love with it. I fell in love
mm,
with just that way of connecting with people. And she was right. It was things I had already been doing with people in my ministry, people in my church, groups that I lead. I just didn't have a name for it until
yeah.
then, I guess. And then the program helped me hone how to really, guide someone in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what
So,
drew you in at first was it was a little bit more about soul care and healing,
mhm,
but
yeah.
then so when you were now beginning to taste a bit of a spiritual direction and going through that training,
Hmm.
if you could name some of the aspects of spiritual direction that really spoke to you, like this is what I like, this is what I love.
Yeah, good question. I would say there was an opening I was experiencing when I would meet with Bruce and he would begin guiding me or asking me questions in that way. There was something like just a deeper well being carved out, formed out than I had previously experienced before. And there was a resonance within me to lock into God that way, not just to work on myself, but to also notice him and his movements and
Mm,
what is he doing? What is he saying? What do I, where do I sense his invitation? And those things just really spoke to me in terms of this was just beyond the type of prayer, the type of worship or inner healing than I knew it. This was just a deeper space. Yeah, I could tell that there was just growth and capacity within me for more of God, for union with God, and then also growing in compassion for people and wanting to draw them in as well.
mm. For some of the listeners may not understand
Hmm.
what that is, like what do you mean?
Mm.
What did he do? How does he draw you in to that space that you're
Do you mean
describing?
Bruce or do you mean
Or yeah, I
God?
guess it doesn't
Yeah,
have to be Bruce, but in
yeah,
spiritual direction, how
yeah.
do they bring you in to that deep space or intimate space?
Yeah, I started just practically doing a lot of different spiritual exercises, exercises like an examine, spiritual disciplines like fasting, solitude, stillness. Lectio was a huge part of that as well. So taking intentional time to participate in those practices that leave the spirit just open to God, those really played a defining factor
Mm,
in that. Where, for example, in the examine, it's a prayer that will take you through your last 24 hours and just walk through your day with the Lord and see where he was moving. Maybe you didn't notice him then, but now as you're looking back, do you see his movements? And so
mm,
as I started practicing that, then in real time, I started noticing even before, I would engage in the examine, I started noticing in real time, God, I sense your presence here. God, I can see how you're moving. I sense your voice. And so that just, yeah, just participating in those very intentional, unitive kind of practices
mm.
were very influential in that.
So you're taking time to kind of look back, trace back to your day and trying
Yeah,
to notice where God was moving in your life. And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
okay. And then what do you do with those moments? Like when you do remember, what do you do?
It would depend. I would sit with it and ask the Lord, what do you see? And sometimes it was, I see your heart here and what you were trying to do. Sometimes it was, you missed the mark on this. Maybe
Mm,
you might need to, circle back and ask for forgiveness or clarify something. Sometimes it was just simply, I just want you to know that I was here with you in this moment.
yeah.
I saw you in this moment and I was with you. And there was something then that started to shift in my perception of who God is in terms of more than wanting to fix my situation, more than wanting to rescue me out of anything difficult, more than, working on myself. I just started to really gain the understanding of how deeply he just wants to be with us. He wants to
Mm,
be with me. He wants to, Emmanuel. He wants to be that more than fixing, more than speaking, more. He just wants presence, and so
yeah.
that really changed my spiritual trajectory. Yeah,
Okay. I want to take us back to the moment when you decided to go to, is that Ashland,
yeah,
where you got
yeah,
the training?
yeah.
Uh, so when you decided to take that on, was there what specific things that really made you want to do that? Was there a
Mm-hmm.
conviction behind that decision to pursue spiritual direction?
Mm-hmm.
Or was that just something that you were just curious about and wanted to try and find out as you go?
Yeah, there were several things. First of all, I had really appreciated some of the content and material that had been coming out of that ministry. I felt as though their teachings on prayer and spiritual formation just were very impactful. So, so that's kind of what drew me in that direction. I well, I mean, it was a little bit of process getting there because when I signed up, we were in COVID. COVID
Mm. Oh,
happened,
yeah.
and then I was diagnosed with breast cancer as well.
Oh,
So it
I'm so
was a
sorry.
little bit of a yeah, it
Mm.
was a little bit of a journey to get there. So I would say I did have plenty of time to decide. You know what? I'm not, I don't want, I don't want to go this direction. But even after COVID, ended and my cancer journey, we got to the other side of it. I still just felt this conviction in my soul, to get into a context where there were others who were desiring the same thing.
Mm.
Even though I've worked here for a long time, I don't know. It's a very new concept here and not something that's well known. And so I wanted to go to a place that there were others who were seeking the same thing, speaking the similar language, and learning how to do this kind of work. I also wanted to be in a more diverse space.
Yeah.
Which just continues to be very important to me. My current area is very homogenous and to our detriment. So this program um, had some diversity that I was glad to be a part of. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's what drew me there, and just wonderful friends that you make. I mean, you go deep pretty quick, so you get to know people deeply, and yeah, just some very very precious times with the Lord that he definitely used that time.
Mm. And you mentioned about, in your context, spiritual direction is not well known, or
Hmm.
not many people knew about it. So
Hmm.
has that changed since you have become a spiritual director?
A little bit. It's gaining traction, I think. what I'm finding is I have to attach spiritual direction with a name and a face.
Mm,
And so it's not something that I would necessarily say, put on an announcement slide and say, come sign up for spiritual direction and just sort of let it hang out there. It's usually more of a personal invitation.
yeah.
So I'm actually seeing about 10 people right now just from personal interactions, from groups that I lead, from, being invited somewhere saying, hey, this is what I do. And I really think that you would benefit from something like this or, whatever, just sort of offering, but not offering in a cold, detached way. It's more of just a personal invitation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, which has then, so then, the people then that I'm meeting are now talking about it to others and saying, "Hey, this is what I'm experiencing as I go through that."
Mm,
And so
that's good.
it's gaining.
The people are receptive, and
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that's good. Yeah. So, what problem do you think spiritual direction is help address that you couldn't fix or address as a worship pastor or in your
Hmm.
ministry?
Well, I think there's a couple. First, I would say just out of my ministry, awareness.
Mm,
I have a very strong sense of God when I'm leading worship.
mm,
And especially in this moment, this group of people has an opportunity to be open to the Lord. Lord, what do you want to say? How do you want to move? How do you want them to minister to you as we are worshiping? But I recognize that's something that I carry. But there are many people in my context that church is on the to do list. And I come to church, I go through these, I do these things,
yeah.
and then I leave. And I think that unfortunately, doing church as a large body on Sunday morning, while I would love for awareness to happen in that context,
Mm,
I've just seen that it generally doesn't because people, or have their agenda or have their, whatever it is that they're carrying with them that day. But I have seen that then the people that I've worked with through spiritual direction and some other things that I've done with people, I have seen them then enter into that context, that back into that Sunday morning context, then with a greater awareness of God. And so then the worship time is much more meaningful to them because
mm,
they have an understanding of how they sense God, how God might be moving, how what God might be saying to them as they're in that context of worship. So that would be the first thing I would say is awareness.
so
Being a spiritual director has helped me help them be aware. And then as we move into more corporate things, then there's awareness there as
yeah.
well.
Is
Yeah.
is that is that more that so when you mentioned about 10 people are coming to see you,
Hmm.
are they kind of learning about how to increase that awareness or become more aware of God's presence? Therefore, because of spiritual direction and that awareness practice that help them benefit in their worship time? Or do you mean because of your awareness has heightened up, you know how to guide people during your worship leading, that you
Mm,
can transfer that awareness to the congregation somehow?
yeah. I think both. I've seen more traction with the one-on-one where the person is gaining an understanding of sensing God with them.
Mm,
It definitely has helped me as I lead worship, but seeing as how there's so many, there's just a full spectrum of how people are coming in and where they're at when they come in. I can guide to a certain point, but we have time restrictions, space restrictions. There's
yeah.
just so many other factors in that. So I do use some of the skills as I lead worship for sure, but I would say that the formational part for a person happens more in the one-on-one
Yeah.
time.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
speaking of formation, I think a lot of churchgoers and people who follow God, they come to church to imagine that they'll get the spiritual formation at the church. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I feel like as a spiritual director, we are seeing that spiritual formation can happen at home, outside the
Mm-hmm.
church, how
Yes.
you journey with God. So, what do you think? What needs do you think spiritual direction meets in Christians that is often missed in church life?
Well, I can speak from my context and sort of our personality,
Hmm.
if you will. But for us and here, I do sense that stillness is so
Mm.
needed.
Yeah.
I think often the church disciples people, and I see it here every day, that we disciple people into service
Mm.
instead of belovedness. And now, once people have a sense of their belovedness, their service actually is from a more, it's from a pure place,
Mm.
but I think that generally the church at large, especially an organized church, has to sustain itself. And if it sustains itself, it needs the volunteers, it needs the
Mm.
people, it needs the budgets, it needs all of that stuff. And so we make busy disciples.
Mm.
I don't know, that just brings me to the words of Jesus: "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest and stillness and slowing down." So that's a goal. If spiritual direction would have a goal that I would articulate, it would be a journey into belovedness rather
Mm.
than service. And I think that is definitely a difference between, organized church and spiritual direction.
Yeah. So when you say belovedness, you mean like how much they're loved by God. And
How much
then
they're loved by God, and that, yeah, that union with Him.
and then that service is coming out of that love that they experience from the Lord, not
Hmm.
necessarily because we need volunteers, or
Yeah,
being inspired and motivated to serve before they
right.
experience the love of Christ.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Yes, yes. And duty and obligation can get you, it can get you somewhere, but
Mhm.
to journey deeper into the heart of God, there's a definite limitation on service and church attendance to get you there, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. That probably also leads people to burnouts and getting tired
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. Mm.
Yes, very
Yeah.
much.
More personally, how has becoming a spiritual director shaped you or changed you personally?
So enjoy sitting down with the person and beginning with an exercise, but then that exercise can go any direction. Just to I just find God's creativity in that so amazing. So I kind of go, and it's probably the teacher in me, and but it's just something that sort of helps me stay organized in my brain. But I meet with each of my directees each month, once a month, and I do the same exercise with all of them,
Mm.
just because it's like I said, it helps me stay organized. But beyond that, it's all how is this meeting this person? So for example, this past month we've been looking at the first chapter of Ruth, and it's a biblical imagination exercise. And so I'll read it slowly through once, and they listen and see what the Holy Spirit might be emphasizing for them as I read, and we take a pause and kind of lean into what we sense Holy Spirit saying, and then I'll read it again and let them just keep leaning into how they feel guided by the Lord. And then I let them start. What is it that you sense, God aiming at your heart, essentially? And every person starts somewhere different. And it's such a beautiful thing
Mm.
to watch. And so as I watch that, it just is, for me personally, it gives me a sense of God is in the planning and God is also in the unplanned things. And so to be responsible, to use that word, to have a have a direction set up, but then to practice taking my hands off of it and saying, God, you get to lead where this person is going, and I will follow and I will try to help as they are. So, as I said before, I'm sort of a teacher by trade, and
Mm.
so one thing you learn in education is there's certain markers and there's certain steps that you have to take, and
Yeah.
you have to, you know, which does get you somewhere in an educational world. But for me, a growth area was to start the process, but then allow the person to experience God for themselves. And that's been a beautiful thing to see.
Mm.
And to just sort of let the doors fling wide. That you might be thinking that God is here, but he might be, in some of these other spaces too. And just this very open-minded idea of who God is and what he wants to do for a person.
Yeah. As a teacher, I'm sure you have to plan ahead. You have to think ahead. You have to think about the
Hmm.
person where they're at and where they
Yeah.
were and then where they're going.
Hmm.
So you probably have to think about steps. So I mean, that must be really hard for you to give that up. Like by
Yeah.
training, you thought to kind of help this
hmm
person move along from point A to point B, and you had all
hmm
these plans and ideas, but
hmm
then now you're saying you're stepping back. What does that mean? Like let God. Can you speak a little bit more to that? I mean, that sounds like a really
Yeah.
hard thing to do as a teacher.
Yeah. So if I was teaching the first chapter of Ruth, we'll say, there are definitely different points that I would bring out, or definitely different things that I would call someone's attention to. Like, well, what do you think about Naomi,
Yeah.
who was so bitter? You know what I mean? Like her response to God was pretty much, I blame God, the Almighty, has dealt me a rough blow here. I would call attention to that. But what I found is when the person themselves says, here's what I see, here's where the Lord is drawing my attention, then I have discovered that they are then able to see the intersection of that exercise or that point of scripture in this instance and how it intersects with their life, which then all of the sudden is not just what is the material that Jess is presenting to me. Now it's, oh, God, you have brought this to my attention because there's something about you that you want me to see.
Mm,
And that is so much better. I have just recognized that that is so much better than the plan that I would lay out.
mm.
While I'm sure the plan that I would lay out would probably be impactful, cause them to think, I really want my main posture as a spiritual director to be that they encounter God, not
Yeah.
me.
Okay.
So,
So
um,
I'm just noticing something. The unfortunate name of calling ourselves spiritual director, because
mm-hmm,
those of us who don't know too much about it, when we hear, "Oh, you're a spiritual director, so you're gonna direct me," right? So,
yeah, yeah,
like when you say, "Oh, yeah," Naomi, who had gone through, or Ruth, or either of them
mm-hmm,
gone through a lot of hardship,
mm-hmm,
when you say it's a fair question to ask. Like, so
mm-hmm,
how does it land with, what do you think about God? Or that's a very
yeah,
directive question, but that's not
mm-hmm,
what you're saying. You're saying that's not what you ask. So what does
yeah,
directing mean? Like, 'cause that's very confusing
yeah.
sometimes.
Yes, yes. And actually that we had this conversation a lot as I was in the training. What is it that we're actually doing? Because are we really planning out each step that we want the person to take? And many of our conversations ended up back to no, the better step is for them to sense what God is directing them
Mm,
to. So I guess I use the word director more as I'm directing you toward God
mm,
rather than a path of thinking or a path of behavior. I'm directing your gaze, helping you cast your gaze toward Him. And then we'll sense together. And, many times there's a person who is able to do that themselves. Sometimes I need to come alongside and say, what do you sense God's invitation is? What do you think God is showing you in that? How do
mm.
you think God's intersecting that for you? Um, so that's how I look at the word director, not necessarily that I'm directing their steps, but more I'm directing them toward God, and then he takes the lead from
I
there.
see. So ultimately, it's God who's directing them.
Ultimately.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's beautiful. It seems like being a director, spiritual director, has changed the way that you talk to people, how you
Hmm.
guide people,
Hmm. Very
how you
much.
how you listen to them, and so on
Hmm.
and so forth. So there's a lot of unique. This is why I love talking with spiritual directors. They have this such a unique perspective and insights,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
and now the totally different posture to
Hmm.
how they listen to people.
Yes.
So here's maybe a little bit of a more challenging question for you.
Hmm.
As a spiritual director now, because you have become somebody different today
Hmm. Hmm.
from 10 years ago or whatever, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the church today?
Ooh, fear,
Fear. Tell me more. What do you
fear.
mean?
I sense that our culture, our church just capitalizes on fear.
Mm,
I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in all the marketing. It's in all the advertising. It's in all the social media. It's in all, I mean, even it's in sermons at church when we're trying to, when there's preaching about fear and eternal, or about hell and eternal separation from God. Fear is a powerful,
Hmm.
powerful motivator.
Yeah.
And it's often mistaken for wisdom. It's often trusted as you're being smart about your next steps. It's not only just a something that's in the water, but it's also something that is actively discipling people into a way of being,
Mm.
where we have fear for our kids. So we're going to make sure that we put them in these types of schools and have them in these types of activities. And I have fear for my finances. So I make sure that I do, X, Y, and Z to make sure that I stay financially secure. And I'm looking on social media, and all of a sudden, now there's fear about whether or not I'm going to get accepted because I was invited here, but I wasn't invited here. It's
Mm.
everywhere. It
Yeah.
is epidemic
Mm.
everywhere,
Mm.
everywhere. And so there there are sometimes I think, Lord, I want to impart resolve into people that says that fear doesn't get the final say. And if we allow ourselves, love is a way more powerful motivator. And biblically, love and
Mm.
fear are opposites. In perfect love casts out fear. The two cannot coexist.
Yeah.
So as people are just in this world, in this society, in this country, in this culture of so much fear about so many things,
Mm.
and fear is preached at them over and over and over, and discipling them. I see spiritual direction as a way to enter into love, which
Mm.
is much more powerful, much more motivating, much more freeing and liberating.
Yeah.
And it's an opposite spirit. If I could say that is the foundation of what I am hoping people get out of coming into spiritual direction, is an experience with love that casts out that fear.
Yeah. I'm sure there are many versions of this story where, somewhere in Florida, alligators,
Mm.
coming toward the
Yep.
baby, and the
Mm-hmm.
father is like thinking about the alligator, how scary alligator is, so
Yep.
he's frozen. Whereas a
Mm-hmm.
mom who's weaker than the father at that,
Mm-hmm.
and runs over there and fights off the alligator because she
Yes.
was driven by love.
Yes.
And then after a while, after that incident, she kind of like, what did I just do? And amazed by her
Yes.
own action.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love is way more powerful than fear. But
Yes.
yes, spiritual direction definitely is very helpful. What we need
Mm-hmm.
today, because I agree. Like we see so much of fear acting
Mm-hmm.
out today. How do we? I mean, other than yay, come see Jess. Be
uh,
reminded that God loves you. I
mm-hmm.
mean, is there, yeah, like, what do we do? Like, is there
Yeah.
some, I don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously, yes, come find your spiritual directors in your area, but is
Mm-hmm.
there anything else that you can say? Like, what do we do? How do we solve this?
Mm. I think just being a non-anxious presence wherever you go,
Hmm.
because not everybody I'm going to encounter is going to come into spiritual direction and sit with me at my table for an hour. But I can, just, for example, just yesterday I was actually in a doctor's office, and there was a woman sitting next to me, and she was having a very public, very loud conversation on the phone. I'm in the middle of a waiting room with a family member, and she hung up the phone. She was very distressed, and she just looked at me and said, "Kids." And I said, "I know, isn't it just so hard?" And she just said, "It is hard."
Mm.
So even just in that interaction, I mean, we were in the same room for maybe 5 minutes, but as I was in that room observing her interaction, and then just deciding I'm going to be a non-anxious presence here for her,
Mm.
validate some of what she's feeling, and then if I can, encourage her, like, listen, there's nothing like a mother's love. You did it out of love.
Mm.
And I see the love that you have for your kids, and some sort of validation. And then she was called back to whatever she was going to
Yeah,
do, and I don't know
yeah,
if I'll ever see her again, but maybe our interaction at that point at least gave her a moment in her day, whether she was aware of it or not, but maybe it gave her a moment in her day that she wasn't pulled down by the fear of
mm.
what her kid was going to do.
But
Um,
that non-anxious presence that you are
mhm,
showing, that's the outward expression that comes from your transformed heart, right? Like you
Yes.
did the
Yeah.
internal work,
Yeah.
inward journey that
Hmm.
transformed your heart, so you can now, express calmness and peace that just
Yeah.
naturally flows out.
Yes.
So to in order to get to where you are, like we could say, yeah, be calm or be a non-anxious
Yeah.
presence, but
Yeah. Yeah.
if you don't have that inside you, it's hard to just, I don't know. Yeah,
It's
sure,
just
maybe
you,
you
you
can
can't
fake it.
yeah,
Yeah, you can fake it
but
until
it's
you
not
make it. I don't
real.
know. It's not real. So
Yeah.
what are some
Yeah.
practices or that you would recommend people to do so
Mm.
that they can get to where you are?
Well, I don't want to by any measure say that I've arrived at anything. But because I will say there is a cost to being here where I am.
Mm,
There has been a cost. There's been a cost in my, personal, professional life where the way I am isn't always understood. And so what does that mean for me?
mm,
The cancer journey was a big part of that.
yeah.
What does it mean to have that kind of diagnosis? And you have a choice. We always have a choice. And am I going to choose to fortify my coping mechanisms by powering up and saying, either that could be like Naomi, God has dealt me a, or powering up and saying, well, God's gonna, we're just gonna push through this, and you know, there was victory on the other side, which I believe that. But if all that's doing is fortifying my coping mechanism, so I'm not afraid, so I'm not, whatever, I'm not sure that has any lasting, effect. Instead, and I guess maybe this is my answer to your question, is there are lots of practices. I mean, there's centering prayer is a wonderful practice. Studying your Bible and seeing what it actually says, not what many people preach that it says, but what it
Mm,
actually says. The life of Jesus, what he actually did, what he actually said. Examine, like I said, lectio, like I said, fasting, stillness. Those are all wonderful practices. But I guess I could say there's nothing that transforms you like suffering does.
mm.
And
Oof.
we really, really want to avoid that at all costs because of the
Yeah,
fear, because
yeah.
of the pain. But it was so, I don't even have a word for how impactful it was, that the moment that I realized that God wasn't going to rescue me out of this, he
Mm,
wasn't going to zap and you're healed. This wasn't a reach for the hem of my garment, the power leaves from Jesus. This wasn't that. This was, I am sitting with you in this. This is a dark invitation. We are descending into this together and
mhm.
understanding that suffering and love are the same.
Oof.
There's two sides of the
Oh
same
man.
coin. And
People are not gonna like what you're saying right now.
no, I know. But I think that we're never, if Christ likeness is what our trajectory is, we're never more like him than when we embrace that suffering like he did, and
Mm.
when we forgive
Oh,
like he did.
that's good. Definitely, you are speaking to the reality that we are so afraid of pain. We're so
Yes,
afraid of suffering. Not that
yes.
we're, encouraging people to purposely enter into suffering, but
Mm-mm.
we are
Life
definitely,
has a way of just saying, here you go. What are you going
yeah,
to do with it? Because we can.
yeah.
We're experts at avoiding it. We're experts at avoiding it.
Or we will pray that God will take away our pain right away, right?
Yep.
We just don't have the tolerance for it
Right.
anymore.
Yeah. And so many people, would say, I'm praying for God to take this away. I'm praying for God to take this away. I can understand the heart behind that. But in my spirit, I knew God was saying, I'm not going to remove from you the very thing that's going to pull you closer to me.
Oof, yeah, that's good.
Um, and so, I mean, there was so much mercy in my cancer journey. I mean, I had to do all of the things, but it was a pilgrimage into the heart of God.
Mm,
I'm not saying every cancer journey would be like that. That's just been my experience. And there's definitely been other areas in life and ministry that have caused suffering. But I have come to learn that if I didn't love much, I wouldn't suffer much. So the they're directly proportional. As much as
mm.
I want to love, then that's as much as I need to be open to how life draws brings you things to practice that.
I would not want to see anybody suffer,
Sure.
we're not saying, choose your pain, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I do look back to my own journey of going through my own sickness, and
Hmm.
then how much it has reshaped me, and
Hmm.
how it has allowed me to be humble, and come to a place where I can really truly meet God,
Yes.
and through that, yeah, he really did strengthen me, and
Yeah.
the type of faith that I have now is unshakable, because
Hmm.
of the journey that I've been. Even though it was painful, it was, I would not want to go back and experience that
Yeah.
again. But
Yes,
or
for sure.
yeah, yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
For
So
sure.
where do you see spiritual direction fitting into the future of church?
Hmm.
Is there a place for it? Yeah. How do we make it happen?
Yeah, I think it's vital. I think it's vital for the church body. I think it's vital for the church leadership. I think that we have to cultivate the ability to hear, see, sense God. Otherwise, we're just a philanthropic organization that isn't necessarily any different from anything else that wants to, improve the world in some way. Um, what has to be different is that God goes with us. That
Mm,
that my sheep know my voice, and that has to be the identifying factor for the church, for believers. Yeah, I think if you want to, and especially for leaders in the church, if you want to have any sort of vibrant ministry that matters in any way, this is drop what you're doing and do this. Get yourself a spiritual church. I mean, I feel that strongly about it. I said to somebody the other day, we were talking about this, I said, I will die on this hill, because there are so many people operating in Christian leadership, Christian ministry, and couldn't tell you the last time they heard from God. Couldn't
mm,
tell you the last time that they wept in His presence. Couldn't tell you the last time that their heart was tenderized toward God through His presence. And that is a shame.
mm,
That is a shame. And so when we cease to hear His voice, we're not doing anything different than
mm,
other religions, other, do do good type of organizations. It is the presence of God and the sense of His presence with us that has to mark us.
mm,
Much like when Moses said, God said, "I will send you into the promised land, but I'm not going with you." And Moses, that was the deal breaker for him. He
mm,
said, "No." Said, "If you do not go with us, we will not go." And
mm.
so His presence has to mark His people, and we have to learn how each of us sense His presence and what that means for our lives. Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't planning on asking. I mean, this just came up for
Hmm.
me, this question. I actually haven't done enough research to know like where it comes from, but I have my speculation why spiritual direction has become a thing. Because
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
I feel like in the in early centuries we didn't have a role, like Scripture doesn't talk about spiritual direction as a
Right.
you know Paul talks about apostles
Yeah.
and prophets and evangelists and shepherds and teachers, but there's no spiritual director or
Right. Right.
whatever this is. So I
Right.
assume the role that we play, or being what we call holy listening, was part of everyone's. I feel like this is everyone knew how to listen to God, and
Hmm.
how did this come about? What I'm just speculating. Like, do you have a
Hmm.
speculation in terms of, or maybe you've done the research.
Hmm. No.
How did it come about? Why do we have this thing called spiritual director or
Yeah.
direction that didn't? I mean, I'm sure it was part of people's Christian
Hmm.
life back in the day, but
Yeah.
how do we come to this where we have
Yeah.
to certify people for this?
Yeah. That's a good question. Well, I think if we talk just maybe in our modern age, I just wonder if there just aren't people talking about their spiritual lives anymore. So my main question for anybody who is searching for this is, who do you talk to about your spiritual life?
Mm,
I think in the early church, well, I think obviously when the disciples were walking with Jesus, to me that seems like a very, very much a spiritual director sort of relationship, even though it wasn't necessarily labeled that way.
yeah.
I mean, God was very literally in their midst. So I just wonder if out of that, I would think the early church, the Acts church, was very often having those conversations. How is this affecting, who those communities of people talking about their spiritual lives together, that koinonia, that fellowship. And so I just wonder if through the ages, and then especially in our modern age, there's so much information, there's so much distraction, there's so much other things to that our attention goes to, that we tend to just not even think about the fact that the spiritual life can be an element in your whole being. So I think, I grew up that way with parents who were constantly talking about a spiritual life. They were constantly, in conversations with people, and those conversations would almost always go back to God and the sense of His movement in something. In that way, I feel fortunate to just have been exposed to those sorts of conversations at an early age. But then I remember when my husband and I got married, he said, not every family does that, right?
Mm.
I said, oh, when your family gets up on Saturday morning and you're just all sitting in the living room and you're having these conversations, that's not typical. So that just sort of clued me into, what if it was typical? And what would it mean for someone to just be able to have spiritual conversations about God, talking about God? So yeah, I guess to answer the question, I just wonder if it's a lack of addressing something that is a vital part of us that we've maybe set to the side. And so now, as spiritual direction is sort of up and coming, people are noticing that this is a malnourished part of me, and what would it mean to bring it into life?
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. We're coming close to the top of the hour, but I just have two last questions.
Sure.
Um, if there's a worship pastor or pastor that is looking to add spiritual direction as part of their ministry, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, for sure. It will only enhance what you do. Especially where, as worship leaders, we are more than musicians. That is a skill that we have, but it is not our primary goal. Our
Mm,
primary goal is to minister to the Lord. And so we have to have a sense of, as we are executing our skill, the higher sense in worship leading is, where is God? What is He doing? And
yeah.
so, to get yourself either a spiritual director or this kind of training to begin to have that sense of awareness in the spaces that you're in will only enhance what you're doing.
Nice. So last question. So if people are inspired by you here listening, and if they want to come see you, how do they find you? Where do they find you? How can they contact you?
Yeah, you can contact me through email, which would be, I'll give you my Gmail. It's Ms. Allan, MIZALLAN @gmail.com.
Hmm.
And maybe just something in the subject that says something about spiritual direction.
Yeah.
And that would start a conversation that I'd love to have.
Yeah. And you offer online as well, or is that
Yes.
in person only?
Yeah. Both. Either.
Both? Okay.
Either's.
And you're
Yep.
in Grove City,
I am in Grove
Pennsylvania.
City, Pennsylvania. So
Mm,
it's an hour north of Pittsburgh, an hour south of Erie. It's Western PA.
mm.
We're not far from the Ohio border. So
Jess, once again, thank you so much for your time. It
yeah, my
was it
pleasure.
was so good to have you, and this is going to help me collect more data on how to bring spiritual direction part of church life and how we can,
Mm,
yeah, become more instrumental in bringing people back to God and for them to
hmm.
know that they're truly loved because we want to
Yes.
see natural love flowing out of them knowing
Yes.
that they're so loved by God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
thank you again,
Well, I
Jess.
support you in that work. It was my pleasure. Love
Yeah.
talking about this with you.
Thank you so much.